I'd like to show you a tape about something that happened to me some 6 years ago.
Brattleboro police, acting on reliable information, seized 39 marijuana plants yesterday afternoon in Brattleboro. Armed with a search warrant, officers Marcel Leclerc, Gordon Smith, Richard Guthrie, and Sherwood Lake searched the garden of 30-year-old Frederick Sternberg at 327 Upper Canal Street in Brattleboro. Sergeant Guthrie, who led the search, told WTSA News Steinberg could be charged with cultivating and manufacturing marijuana, a felony under Vermont law. Guthrie will file a report to the state's attorney's office for possible action.
My name is Rick Sternberg. The sequences you are about to see were taped in the garden and driveway of my former residence and in the office of my lawyer, Bill Dorsch, both in Brattleboro, Vermont. It was July 23rd of this past year, 1975. I had just returned home from a day of errands and was taking the groceries out of the car when 2 carloads of men pulled up the driveway. I saw that 3 of the men were reporters for the local media, and I knew at once that the others were not, as I'd originally thought, real estate agents, but were in fact cops. One of the policemen pulled out a warrant and read it to me in a painful monotone. The warrant gave them permission to search my garden for some alleged marijuana plants that had been discovered there earlier that day by Game Warden Robert Bingham. When one of the reporters referred to the search as a major media event, I decided that I would cover it myself, and I ran in the house for my portable video equipment, and I started to tape as the cops and the reporters started to savagely pull my plants out of the ground. But what follows is the videotape I shot that day. I've asked Bill to watch it with us and give his commentary as we go. So I'll roll it now.
You missed one right there. One more coming, Richard.
Yeah, I get one extra here first.
Can I talk now? Why don't we stop the tape? Should I just pull it up here? What we just saw was the reporter from the local radio station going over and assisting the police in the search, or in the actually pulling up the plants. One of our contentions from the start of the case was that the police acted in a very inappropriate manner by notifying all the local media, and I think you'll see later in the tape of actually driving them to the scene of the search. The press takes a fairly strong position that they are not about to be a party to any criminal or civil action, that they won't be called in to testify. And in fact, there were a number of things that happened throughout this search that were witnessed by reporters. It appeared for a while in our investigation that they might hold a major part of the defense of the case, our contention being that an illegal search took place. When I approached the local newspaper suggesting that they might be able to assist justice, I didn't say assist Rick Sternberg, but assist justice in the case, I got jumped upon by the local editor, saying that this was freedom of the press. Somehow it seems unreasonable that they arrive at the scene of a search, blast the entire information over the papers, the TV, the radio station, and then in no way will they be responsible for what they saw. We were not at any time asking them to report on things they saw through their expertise as reporters, as much as to say what they saw happen when they were at that search. I'm particularly upset by a reporter who would we can assume would not come in to testify on either side's behalf, but who walks over to a plant and pulls the plant out when one of the police officers said, "Here's another one." That just seems totally inappropriate. It's not illegal, but it just seems inappropriate. Is that the right way?
No.
The other way.
Yeah, I guess.
Have you been counting them?
Yeah.
What's the count?
Well, I've got 20 so far. 38.
There. Next one up. A picture of it. Get in there.
I got an odd one.
We're about to see something that's really pathetic on the tape. Here's a man whose house and property is being searched. He is immediately aware that he's subject to some pretty heavy criminal prosecution, and I think Rick said in the early part of this tape that they had read the search warrant in a monotone to him. He now goes to a reporter to ask him what in the world is going on. During the entire search, what is shocking in a lot of these searches is that we imagine that a search takes place with people bursting into rooms and guns coming out. And in fact, the majority of searches are anything but that. They're very low-key. They're very, very disarming to the person who's being searched. He almost becomes, and I think we'll see later on the tape, that he almost becomes a friend. Either a friend of the police, or else he becomes so thankful that no one broke his head open that he starts saying things that maybe he shouldn't say. It seems to me that in the very early part of the search, there is no longer any danger of anything being taken from the scene. Rick was alone. The police should have taken the time to explain to him what they were there for and what they were going to do. And there should have been a police officer with him explaining to him any questions he had. I think we'll see that there's a very cursory explanation of any questions he asks.
Where are you from?
WKVT.
And how long have you known about this? And how long have you been hanging on, waiting for me?
About an hour.
How many in there?
9.
Sure.
Did the cops call you to tell you that it was happening?
Holy mackerel. This is probably
You witnessed a lot of searches such as this?
Is that thing running?
Sure is.
Very slow.
If you listen carefully to the camera, you'll hear a whistle. That's the only sound, and the deck makes a sound.
Videotape, right?
come up to that height, approximately. Length.
I don't know.
You don't know?
It's very difficult to know. I don't know if it's appropriate to answer that question.
But this is your garden, the home. It's not hers.
This area is my garden. This area is mine. If it has to be.
You realize it's a violation to grow this stuff, cultivate it, possess it in the state of Vermont.
I guess I do. Should I not be answering these without the presence of a lawyer? I mean, I'm a little bit unsure whether
You can have a lawyer.
my rights are being violated. Am I under arrest or something?
No, you're not under arrest at this time.
We've all heard a lot about the Miranda warnings, that you have a right to remain silent. Those warnings and those rights only attach at the time you're in custodial interrogation. Rick was not in custodial interrogation. It was quite clear that he could have left the scene. They had no intention of arresting him at that point. And I think that what we're seeing happen here is a person who's under a tremendous amount of pressure. He's not exactly sure what's going on, but he knows it isn't good. And he's subjected to some off-the-cuff questions by the police, and he just doesn't know how to handle it. The courts have been very clear that at this point he does not have a right to a lawyer appointed by a court, nor do the police have to warn him that he has a right to remain silent. However, anything he says can be used against him. It would be nice if everybody realized that they have the right to remain silent, but it certainly doesn't come across that way. When a police asks a question, you're afraid he might get a little heavy if you don't answer him. Not that he's going to beat you up, but that things will get, what's an awfully friendly scene is not going to be so friendly.
Well, what the information that you're asking me for, what use can it be put to?
I don't know.
So would I be in my own best interest not to say anything to you?
Well, we pretty well know who the place is rented out to and so forth.
Well, shouldn't that be something that I'm informed of, if it is in my self-interest, or within my rights and in my self-interest?
Yeah, you can have an attorney. You don't have to answer anything. I'm not forcing you to answer anything.
Oh, I see. But I don't have to be informed of that in any formal way. That's not part of that law.
We're not in a police station.
That's only in a police station.
You're not under arrest.
Oh, I see.
The police don't even understand the law. It has nothing to do with being in a police station. It has to do with being in custody. What the officer just said was a complete misinterpretation of the law. Although the rights don't attach in this case, Rick did not have a right to a lawyer or to the warnings. I think that it shows in a lot of other situations the police don't apply the law properly.
There might be a warrant later on charging you with such an offense.
Right now they're inspecting some little flats, plant flats. They were looking, they thought they had discovered some little baby plants growing there, but they had discovered some tomato plants.
They're checking here. See what you got growing in the box.
Are they going in the house? Oh.
The search warrant was limited to the outside premises.
I was wondering, if they, after they've discovered something outside, aren't they then entitled, couldn't they then follow it up by a search of the house?
No, because they would only have a right to go into the house without a search warrant if they have probable cause to believe there's something in there that's illegal. All the marijuana was in the ground, so that they had, and it was growing season. They had no reason to believe there was anything drying out in there. Whoever, we never did find out who had planted that marijuana, but whoever did had taken the trouble to plant it in the ground. I would say that they did not have a right to go into the house. The problem is that the kinds of law that I'm talking about is appellate law. Things that are won when they're appealed up to the Vermont or whatever state Supreme Court, or even the United States Supreme Court. We weren't trying this case at that level. We were trying it at the local district court. And if they had gone into that house, I think we would have been pretty hard-pressed to get the judge to suppress whatever evidence they found in there. I think the major reason he would have suppressed it would be if they had found, he knew that they found plenty of evidence outside of the house, so they didn't need the evidence in the house. We were faced with a situation where the judge trying the case considers himself to be the defender of the people, and he works on a day-to-day basis with the police. He has a conservative bent, and I think that this is not unusual. Most district court judges do, or lower court judges do, and he's not inclined to suppress evidence, even if the case law tends to show that he should have suppressed the evidence.
In most cases today, a local person will give you a citation to come to court 2 weeks from the day we issue.
In other words, you trust me to come to court.
Unlike what most of us think, there is not an automatic arrest situation in something like this. If they have reason to believe the person will be around, they'll just notify them of when to come in for arraignment.
If we didn't trust you, we'd arrest you, place you under arrest, and bring you in and have bail set or have a bail hearing.
Right.
See, but I don't see any need for an arrest warrant. I haven't had any knowledge that I would need it. Okay?
Okay.
So, I'll be getting in touch with you later.
Okay.
It might be a week. It might be a day. I don't know. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
I said thank you.
I'm not sure why Rick said thank you, but my guess would be that the whole thing was so low-key that he had forgotten, or maybe hadn't forgotten, but he was just sort of thankful that nothing bad had happened.
Yeah, I was saying thank you for not arresting me.
Yeah. But they didn't want to disappoint Rick, and they did arraign him and charge him with possession. One of the things that happens at this stage is that the police leave. They just say, "We'll be back in touch." And I have a client who was had his barn searched in October, in the early part of October, and we talked last week again. He still has not been served with any papers, although the police came back 3 weeks later and said, "We're making out a possession charge against you, and we'll be back." Now, that was a much more illegal search than what happened here, than what happened in Rick's case, and it's conceivable that the state's attorney understood that to be an illegal search and knew he would be in for a fight in any criminal trial. They got the grass, and they scared the living hell out of the people, and maybe that was sufficient. But poor people are sort of wondering, and they called me up, and I said, I just would not advise going to the police and say what's happening, because we don't want to trigger them into doing something.
Excuse me, Sergeant. Could you tell me how what the information that you had was?
Well, you got a copy of it all. I gave you a copy.
That was in there?
Yeah.
Oh, gee. I guess I'm going to have to read it again.
Where'd you put it?
I put it down inside. I'll read it.
You want me to put down there how many plants I took from you?
Is that necessary? I mean, is that part of your...
Yeah, it's part of my job to give you an inventory of what I took.
Okay, wait a minute. I'll get it.
3. Okay, I put down there the date and time, my name, that I took 39 plants.
Okay, thank you.
Coming up now, we'll just see the reporters leave with the police, which I find particularly upsetting. To whatever extent the reporters or the press feels it has a certain integrity from the either the prosecutor or defense side, I think it's mitigated by them going to the scene with the prosecutors. is on.
Let's check a little playback.
Brattleboro police, acting on reliable information, seized 39 marijuana plants yesterday afternoon in Brattleboro. Armed with a search warrant, officers Marcel Leclerc, Gordon Smith, Richard Guthrie, and Sherwood Lake searched the garden of 30-year-old Frederick Sternberg at 327 Upper Canal Street in Brattleboro. Sergeant Guthrie, who led the search, told WTSA News Steinberg could be charged with cultivating and manufacturing marijuana, a felony under Vermont law. Guthrie will file a report to the state's attorney's office for possible action. Brattleboro merchants statement in Walpole.
What, you ask, was the outcome? Well, I got off. I had a smart lawyer and a videotape.